advantage for the 49ers. We think rare. We'll see. But there's one big reason why this is a must-win game for the 49ers, because they don't get many chances like this.
Well, think about next week. They're at a huge disadvantage because usually it's like, well, who's our quarterback? Who's their quarterback? Next week it's Jimmy Garoppolo and their quarterback's Patrick Mahomes. So that's disadvantage 49ers. Advantage Andy and Patrick. Like they're going back-to-back weeks. Jimmy Garoppolo versus Baker Mayfield, advantage 49ers. Last week was clear. I mean, Jimmy's in a different universe than Baker. Now, I don't know where you stand on this. Mariota is clearly just a more even keel human being, but I would say he's a better player currently today than Baker is. Now, Baker's highs a couple years ago were better than anything Mariota did, but like what I saw out of Mariota against Tampa, and just watching Falcons a little bit this year, is a better player than Baker. I would rather have Mariota on the field for my team than Baker Mayfield. That being said, he's still a bottom. Part of it is just, the first 15, 16 quarterbacks are pretty good. Like he's a bottom 7-8 quarterback in the NFL. And as we've talked about, Jimmy's squarely probably smack dab in the middle, about 16, but he's better than Mariota. So the Niners have a better passing quarterback than the Atlanta Falcons. And they're missing, a guy that I don't know if he's a quote unquote star yet, but Kyle Pitts be out.
Better.
Ridley suspended.
I would say I would rather play Baker in a single game than play Marcus Mariota in a single game, just because of his element of athleticism.
Who would you rather have on your team?
Yeah, I'd rather have Marcus Mariota on my team.
Yeah.
And I think their coach, Carolina just fired their coach. Atlanta offensively actually feels like, they're band-aiding a few things because, like you said, Pitts is out. But I mentioned this on the last pod. When you watch Atlanta, like if you go back and watch the Atlanta Bucs game, and they were down 21-0, but clearly Arthur Smith he knows what he's a smart offensive coach. I think that's clear when you watch them. Like they're creative. They try to make the most of Mariota, but there are limitations. And one of the main limitations is just the straight drop back accuracy game with him is just not, when I say drop back, I just mean the passing game. It's a lot of it, pistol, play action, whatever. But they miss throws in their passing game, right? They're just inconsistent in their passing game.
I think the difference, because two NFC South teams that are not going to win a lot of games, going to be drafting really high. It does feel like Arthur Smith is a legitimate offensive NFL guy, right? Like he's an offensive NFL guy. Is he a good head coach? Time will tell. Also does feel a little bit, though, are they kind of stuck in that Panthers? Mariota's a little bit better than anything the Panthers have had. Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield. But ultimately, they're never going to suck that much. What are they kind of in no man's land? Like, how do they ever kind of got to get lucky? Last year they drafted the kid from Cincinnati, Ritter. To me, he's a backup.
Yeah.
This year, clearly, there's a lot worse teams than them. Like, they're what would you say they're trending toward? 5-6 wins, probably drafting 8th, not 2nd.
But to me, that can be okay. The 3 best young quarterbacks in the league are Herbert, Allen, and Mahomes, and none of those guys were the first quarterbacks. Were any of them the second quarterbacks taken? I don't think so in their drafts, right? So,
but what's the chances that you end up with a guy like that?
No,
right?
I understand, but I'm just saying if you're drafting 8th and you have a little bit of, if you're drafting 8th and you have a good coach, a good offensive coach, then I think you'll have a shot at getting somebody. But you're right; it's a tough spot.
You're saying their future is brighter in Carolina? Carolina fired.
October
7th.
Like I would say, Pitts and Drake London both look good. Got to be healthy. Both are. Now, Panthers have good receivers too, but the Falcons receivers are younger. So I would give them, that's partly. Carolina's defense is better, right? But
so basically, if you could take the Panthers,
I do think they might have their coach, so they're ahead of that. They're ahead from that standpoint.
But the problem is, this is year 2. We could be by year 4 here in a couple of years, and he's never won more than 7 games. It's hard.
Yeah, no, you can definitely get mired. I saw Josh McCown has started contributing to the Underdog podcast. He's doing a video podcast, and it made me think is David clearly the Texans wanted to hire McCown a couple times and passed on him a couple times. So now he's getting he's going to start talking, and I wonder if David Tepper would hire him because he's going to watch Josh McCown videos, and there's going to be someone else tried to hire him but didn't have the balls to.
Are you sure, though? Because it feels like Tepper just picks up the Charlotte Observer.
That's true. Could be that. I'm just saying he's going to want to go outside the box, be a smart guy. You're right. He did yell at the newspaper columnist. But anyway, just an aside.
He's more likely to read the Charlotte Observer than like, hey man, I saw your takes on YouTube. Fucking incredible.
Yeah. they got suggested to me while I was watching some shorts. Jimmy Garoppolo right now is 5 touchdowns and 1 interception, which is an outrageous ratio, right? Last year he was 20 touchdowns and 12 picks. So that's worse than 2 touchdowns for every
Does get credit for Debo breaking 3 tackles and juking out.
But he always does. Like, to me, the 5 is not the number. It's the 1. The 1 is the number with Garoppolo. The 1 is the number with Garoppolo. And he's started 3 games. So if you told me how many games are left, they've 3-2, right?
They're 3-2. So there's 12 more games left. There's 17-game season.
12 games left. So if that would mean at this rate, 1 pick every 3 starts, he throws 5 total interceptions. That seems unlikely, but
yeah. Well, he's got a multiple pick game in him.
Yeah, but but that's the thing. Every quarterback does. Every quarterback has a multi.
When we overreacted, listen, that's unfair. When we reacted to the Denver game, because we can just react to games. And I think sometimes like overreaction. Well, your overreaction if you're saying fire a guy, cut a guy, or extend a guy after 1 game. But if you get excited or angry or, up or down on the game, that is okay because you are just reacting to the event. And the Denver game, remember, we were throwing like, is this guy going to get to 20 touchdowns? And on this pace, if he could get to the high 20s, I mean, last year they made the conference championship. And what did he throw? 24 touchdowns, 22, 23? If somehow on God's green earth he could get to 30 touchdowns.
20. Last year it was 20 regular season.
Jesus. I guess he missed a couple starts, huh? But still, if he could get to like 29 touchdowns, that would take a little burden off the run game. And it would just make them more explosive offense. And to me, it would, less than the run game, it would take a burden off the defense, which is, last time I checked, missing some players.
Yeah. So you would rather, if you said, I can tell you one number and you can predict the Niners season off of this, Jimmy's touchdowns or Jimmy's interceptions, you'd rather know his touchdown number?
Would I rather get to pick it or would I get to know it?
Well, what's more telling? Because if you told me he throws 29 touchdowns, I'd go, okay, he probably throws 12 to 13 picks, and maybe that's okay. But if you told me he throws 7 interceptions, which feels unlikely, but if you told me that, I'd be like, how are they not good?
Yeah, I think you would choose the smaller interception number for sure. But is playing it safe all year long enough for them to win? Well, it's not. It's the thing that I talked about. They're going to play too many explosive quarterbacks to play it safe. You can't. He's not going to be able to have like threw a touchdown, threw a pick against Tom Brady, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, and be like, yeah, they won. But I mean,
the Bucks have played some of those games, right? Low scoring games.
Well, that might be a bad example because their defenses are both.
Kansas City, the Rams next, the Chargers.
I would say one thing about the Chargers, they do score some points whenever I'm looking up. They do some weird shit and they might lose, but like even last game, it was 30-28, right? I mean, you're not
Cardinals.
Their offense is really sputtered, but Hopkins is coming back, right? Next week.
Saints, Dolphins, Bucks.
Did you say Marquise Brown statistically has had a good season?
Marquise Brown, they are throwing him the ball nonstop, and he's catching it. He's got like over 70% of his targets are catches.
Well, you would say that like once Hopkins comes back, assuming he's just solid still, Hopkins, Marquise, and I mean, I watched some of that Eagle game. I mean, Ertz still okay. And Kyler just he missed a pass late in the game. I had a buddy in the NFL who must have been like writing up players and just sent me the pass. It was second down on the drive where he slid and spiked the ball in that disaster. Ertz wide open. Would have got him in field goal range, like even much closer. And Kyler just fucking sails it way over. Which
was it like clean pocket or was he on the move or what was the deal?
Complete clean, just type Herbert, Mahomes, Allen, just drills, it's like a 35-yard throw, but it's probably like a 16-yard gain. Kyler, I mean, Shaquille O'Neal in his prime jumping wouldn't have tipped the ball. But in fairness, the one thing is like Jimmy might make that miss too. Kyler is pretty bad. I would say right now, not trying to get ahead of ourselves, anything minimum 1-1 against the Cardinals is the minimum. is the minimum this year.
0-2 last year. Cardinals, Saints, Dolphins, Bucks, Seahawks, Commanders, Raiders, Cardinals. So you'd say Falcons, then I'd say Saints, Seahawks. I would say Seahawks, but maybe you would disagree. Commanders, and maybe Dolphins. You have a better quarterback in those games.
Matthew Stafford's resume speaks for itself. He's been a much better player than Jimmy. He's been atrocious this season, and Jimmy's already outplayed him once. Did you see yesterday?
Jimmy has Jimmy's defense, though. That's part of it, right? Stafford has to play Jimmy's defense.
The injury report, we were talking the other day about the Rams can't afford. Kupp and Donald, both foot injuries, like their season would be over if those guys miss games.
Wow. So they missed practice on Wednesday?
They missed practice on Wednesday. I saw Kupp probably going to play, but, it wasn't just like, vet rest day. It's like, no, they have foot injuries.
Jimmy threads crazy needles and will also miss a wide open post. Yeah, Jimmy, he just throws some 50-50 balls on slants. Not a lot of guys throw 50-50 balls. Like 50-50 balls usually means it's in the air high.
What throw Jimmy does not have is just like the back shoulder stop throw. Like Brady, Manning, the high-level guys made a career of.
Well, because no one's going deep. The DB's not worried about it. Don't you have to be worried about the guy going deep for that throw to work?
Probably true, yeah.
I don't know. It's a good point. Like you don't really see that throw.
And if it does happen, you're like, oh, Jimmy was just way off, and then great play by Kittle or Ayuk
or Jennings. Because you said back shoulder, he does go back hip a lot.
Yeah.
On slants or whatever. He has thrown some tight windows, no question. He made, and there were a lot of clips of the L-22 going around the other day on the internet. He made some really good throws. He did the other day against the Panthers.
I know this. Jimmy has in the driver's seat of being potentially able to make himself some cash. I don't think anyone, if he had a great season and the Niners won, anyone's giving him some like $100 million contract again. But I don't think it'd be out of the realm of possibility to easily get some like 2 for 60, 45 guaranteed type thing, right?
Well, we talked about it on the podcast the other day, teams that are regretting not getting Garoppolo. And isn't it funny? It happens every year. You go through the list and you go, okay, who needs a quarterback? And it'll be one team. And then here we are 6 weeks later. It's like 6 teams. So you're right. All it takes, and everybody already went through one off season where they said, now here, this season hasn't played out for Garoppolo yet, but everybody's already gone through the season when they try to band-aid it. Not all of these teams are going to be able to get quarterbacks. Are the Steelers going to be bad and then go into next year with Kenny Pickett as their starter? I don't know. I mean, Kenny's still got a lot of season left, so maybe he'll get better. But
I think Kenny Pickett's safe for a couple of years. You don't draft a guy number 20 and he doesn't get a couple of years.
Yeah, so they're just going to be bad again, or he'll be better. I don't know. I mean, what if they're so bad that they end up picking in the top 3 this year, which feels unlikely?
To me, the two teams, I think the Giants have some financial shit they got to deal with, but like Davis Mills I've watched some, he's kind of coming back to earth.
Yeah.
I think the Texans and the Giants, especially if they think they have a nucleus of like, another year of drafted a bunch of guys, would just be like, quote unquote, overpay, like that 2 for 60, or maybe give him a kind of fake 3-year deal at like 80 million. But it's like they're offering him $45 million guaranteed, or just some number that's really, really high, and he gets to be a lock starter.
Right. Because the one thing with him, even if you bring him in and you draft a quarterback in the second round, that guy is not going to take his job. That guy is not going to beat Jimmy out, right?
No chance.
And if for some crazy let's say Jimmy gets hurt, that guy comes in, plays 5 games and is good, you don't have to worry about Jimmy being on your bench. Like, he'll be fine.
Well,
right? He'll handle the situation well.
No matter, let's say this thing goes really well and the Niners are a 12-win team, win the division, win a playoff game, or just, maybe they lose in the playoffs in round 2 or 3, but it's not like Jimmy's good. What do they do? I think they got to compete for his services, right?
I think they do have to compete for his services. Yes, they might have to compete for his services, but part of that, you didn't even mention what is the recovery on Trey Lance like? Because remember, Jimmy didn't get traded because no one was 100% sure how his shoulder was going to recover from the surgery. Well, if you're the Niners, can you let Jimmy go until you're 100% sure that Trey Lance is fully recovered from his surgery?
Well, do you remember that Dak Prescott, who had a similar injury, they remember he was kind of hit or miss in that OTAs when Hard Knocks?
Yes,
It was like
good point.
so, and that was not OTA. I mean, that was training camp, right? So I would imagine Dak Prescott did not participate in OTAs. Can the Niners afford to have a no OTA, just training camp? Let Jimmy walk. Trey Lance just starts coming back off the injury. That seems kind of crazy.
Unknown how he's recovered and if he's any better as a player. But I will say this: the counter would be, well, they were prepared to go into as long as they know that he's healthy, they were prepared to go into this season with Trey. So shouldn't they be prepared to go into next season with Trey?
I think it immediately changes though after an injury and just some more time, which gets just more negative. Gives you it makes you think a little more.
Yeah, I agree.